Welcome to Celluloid Citizens. I'm Brian O'Connell.
And I'm Sean M. Thompson.
And today we're talking about a 2013 film, Enemy. I don't know if you want to call it a thriller or a horror, kind of ambiguously genred film. It's directed by Denis Villeneuve, who is a great director from what I've seen of his work. And it stars Jake Gyllenhaal in two roles, along with Melanie Laurent, Sarah Gadon, and Isabella Rossellini, a surrealist icon.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting film. This is my second time watching it. I like it, but
I just saw it today for the first time in preparation for this, and I think I liked it. I definitely need to see it again, I feel, to get a better handle on it.
It's a bit confusing because it has surrealist elements. They're, like, again, sort of like First Reformed. They're not all the time. So when they occur, you're kind of like, is this a dream sequence or what is this?
It's very sparingly deployed. The thing I admired was how even the non-surrealist sequences in the traditional sense felt surreal, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. They were very, just very weird.
Getting into the plot, so there's a history teacher, Adam, living a very dull kind of, looks pretty bleak at the start of the film for him. He's teaching about totalitarianism, which may or may not be thematically relevant, and sleeping with his girlfriend, but it seems very emotionless and cold when they're with each other, and just a general kind of bleak existence. And the thing that sets the plot in motion is he sees a film where an extra in the background looks exactly like him, in that it is literally...
It's literally, Jake Gyllenhaal. It's the same actor.
Yeah. And by the way, Jake Gyllenhaal is extraordinary in this film, I think. Absolutely extraordinary.
He does a really good job. Yeah, sometimes you see stuff where it's like motion capture and it's like the same person playing two different roles and you're kind of like, eh.
He sells it, though, I feel.
He does. He has a lot of like really subtle differences between the two characters.
Yeah, and I mean, I haven't really seen him in much, and especially not dramatic roles, but also just the expressiveness he brings to it. Just the very, like, especially when he's in the Adam character more so than the double, which is Anthony. Just a very, like, haunted quality to the way he looks at people and is just kind of this alienated person. It was very, very striking performance to me.
Yeah, it's definitely, even the second time around, the performance stands out. Everyone in this film is a good actor, except possibly the random guy that's like, hey, do you watch movies? But like, he's supposed to be just like a random guy, so.
Yeah. I wonder how it feels for that man to be in this movie where every other character is playing some sort of ambiguous, significant role in this, like, psychological drama, and he's just there to just recommend a movie for one scene.
Yeah, it's probably weird.
Yeah, but I think especially Anthony's wife, who's the only person other than Adam and Anthony who gets kind of an idea of the situation, if there is a situation, was especially just, there's a scene where she encounters Adam in public and she returns to the house, and this look on her face, you can see how deeply disturbed she's been. It was the whole thing just kind of got under my skin, I felt.
Yeah, we're going to mention spoilers, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because I don't think there's a way to discuss this film in any way without them. So the scene in question is, I think the one you're talking about, she goes to the college.
Yes.
That, at first she thinks her husband's just like playing a trick on her, basically.
Yeah, and... Because
it's like clearly his voice, she's like, yeah, okay. But so she goes to where this note lists this other guy working. And he's there, and he's just like, he sits on a park bench and looks over at her, and there's just like nothing. You can tell he has no recognition at all. And, you know, he asks her like how many months she is and all this stuff. And
Yeah.
she's clearly just like, what the hell?
Just this the expressions that go across her face as she's processing it, and meanwhile Adam is just kind of like, oh yeah, it's a great day. It's kind of almost comedic.
Yeah, just completely oblivious.
But another thing about that scene that, I mean, this film seems built to kind of challenge the viewer. It's not a narratively easy watch. In that for a while it is kind of left somewhat ambiguous whether they even are two separate people. And the thing in that scene that's key to me is as he walks away, she calls her husband, and he doesn't pick up until Adam has actually gone back inside.
Yeah, until Adam's around the corner and you can no longer see him, so you can't really prove whether he answered the phone or not.
Yeah, it's very bizarre. I don't know. There's a lot of
I mean, I watched a couple videos that kind of explained what they think the film is about. I choose to think, you know, whatever your interpretation is, that's fine.
I agree.
It could be two people, it could be one person.
Mm-hmm.
I've had both interpretations now seeing this movie twice, so.
Yeah, so when at the start of the film you see he's clearly not okay prior to this strange disruption in his life, that he seems, I don't know, I'm still working through it, but he seems to be very alienated and lonely.
No, he's not doing great.
And I love those beautiful shots of Toronto where this was filmed, with this very bleak, it looks like an alien landscape almost, just the way they shoot these buildings and the kind of gray washed out palette. I mean, even before the first surreal juncture, it already feels like a borderline horror movie kind of dreamlike scenario.
It is. This film is interesting. You kind of can't pin it down because I wouldn't say it's a horror movie.
No, I wouldn't either.
And I mean, I guess you could say it's a thriller, like psychological thriller or like a drama, character drama.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it has a general tone that one wouldn't associate with most thrillers. I guess the closest...
I mean, if it is a thriller, it's very subdued.
Absolutely. The closest it comes is when he's like, you know, lurking around Anthony's office building in the sunglasses and kind of searching after this person who he has this mysterious link to. That felt kind of almost noirish to me, kind of echoes of, you know, Jimmy Stewart in Vertigo, which is actually somewhat alluded to in the text itself. When he goes to the video rental place, there's a prominent poster for it in there. But as it goes on, it gets into a weirder and weirder space, and it's just hard to discern. I mean, after a point, it wasn't so much a question of suspense as just what is even going on.
Yeah, that's kind of how the film works. Do we want to get into? Well, do you want to say like what you think what you think actually happens, like in terms of what the film's supposed to be about?
Okay, I'm processing it a little bit. I also read a few interpretations before coming on. And it seems to have something to do with gender to me thematically. And in that there's this obvious motif of the spiders, which as an arachnophobe, this was not an easy set for me at some point. But yeah, consistently associated with women in the film, which the director has obliquely alluded to, but it's not clear what that symbol is supposed to mean in relation to the women. And just the very different types of masculinity espoused by the two doubles. So you have a very meek history professor and then a kind of cocky adulterous actor. I don't know, it felt like it had something in that space, but I'm still trying to puzzle out if it's a one-to-one allegory or if it's just kind of a melange of symbols.
That is a bit hard to say. There are a number of shots of spiders, clearly a thematic motif. We start with, it's like a weird seedy sex club, and there's this woman who's about to step on a spider, and then at one point, it looks like there's this enormous spider over Toronto.
I loved that shot. It was so creepy when it was just it wasn't just the fog and the smoke. It's just very unsettling to watch when that happens.
Yeah, and then he has, I think it's supposed to be a dream sequence where he's seeing a woman walk by upside down and her head is a spider.
Yeah. And these are just, it's not like there's any build up to these moments in the film.
No, there's no like explanation either. It's just kind of like regular realist, and then it's like, and a woman walks by with a spider for a head.
Yeah, just sewn right into the fabric of the film. But there are subtler expressions of that as well, I think. In the telephone wires or cables over the city, they keep panning over them, and it looks like a web. And obviously near the end, Anthony's car is overturned in a car crash, and it zooms in on the window, and the glass has fractured in a web-like way. I guess the most...
Yeah, it looks like a spider web. And the very last shot too, which is now infamous.
Yes, that was...
Which honestly scared the crap out of me the first time I saw it, because you're not expecting it
There's
at all.
no audio cue. There's no, like, lighting change or anything. It's just he's in the kitchen, the music is playing, and he just walks in, and she's obviously at this point mixing up the names already.
I think her name Helen, or no,
the history teacher.
I think that's Adam.
Yeah, Adam has replaced Anthony virtually at this point, and he walks over to see Helen, except Helen has turned into a giant spider that is cringing in the corner of the room.
Now, one thing that's interesting that I think is important about, because when he walks over and looks at the spider, it backs away.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a mirroring of the beginning where there's a woman whose heel is about to step on this spider.
Yeah. In that kind of ambiguous club or function that keeps getting referred to across the film.
Yeah, and so I watched a number of videos about what this film is supposed to mean. And the best interpretation I heard is that the reason at the end Helen backs away from Adam is women are represented by spiders in the film. And at the very beginning, we're seeing a spider about to literally be crushed, which is like representative of like Anthony or Adam like pushing women away emotionally or literally physically. And so at the end, this happens right after he says, "Hey, I'm going to go out tonight."
Yeah.
And what happens is Adam opens this private piece of correspondence meant for Anthony, and there's a key in it. And it's supposed to, I think, be the key to the sex club at the very beginning of the film.
Yes, because mid-film you see Anthony's coworker tells Adam, like, "Oh, I don't know if last night was great, but I don't know if they're giving out keys," or something like that.
Yeah, like they're going to do it again, but he's like, "I don't know if I'm getting a key this time."
Yeah.
So basically, the interpretation that I think is probably the most probable is Adam and Anthony are the same person. And I think the history teacher, Adam, is the real one.
Okay.
And Anthony is just sort of in his head and represents basically like toxic masculinity and like a fear of commitment.
Yeah, that could, well, because again, Adam is this very repressed, I guess, stereotypically insufficient man, and then you have Anthony, who fits the toxic masculinity stereotype almost exactly.
Yeah, and so I think there's key moments like the car crash at the end where Anthony is with Adam's girlfriend Mary, and it seems like they both die.
Yes.
Because it's a pretty bad car wreck. But I think that's supposed to represent Adam basically killing off the part of him or at least trying to kill off the part of him that's toxically masculine and that has the fear of commitment. Because in reality, Helen would be his wife if he's one person, and she's 6 months pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I think it's supposed to be him at the beginning of the film in the sex club.
Yeah.
So it's like he's clearly been messing around.
Because also when the first conversation we see Anthony have with his wife is his wife says, "Have you been seeing her again?" So we know he's been unfaithful. And this very casual relationship he has with Mary at the start of the film definitely feels almost affair-like in some ways, that she just comes over.
It does, because you can tell, after they have sex, a lot of the time he's sort of like, hey, like you can see he's like, you can stay. And she's just never, she always puts her clothes right back on and leaves.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I am piecing it together myself a little bit.
It took me, I had to watch, I sort of cheated. I watched like 2 videos of like 20 minutes and like 12 minutes, like literally breaking it down.
But I've seen there's so many different interpretations that have been put forth.
There are many. The other interpretation is that basically Anthony is Adam's doppelganger.
Yeah.
Like Anthony is like the evil.
A literal different,
version of Adam, like literally personified.
There is an interesting...
And I could see that actually could work.
Well, because there is an interesting Vulture article about it where they talk about the scar on the rib, the scar that they both share. And, thinking about Adam, obviously the name is biblically loaded, that woman was created from Adam's rib. And these 2 men are sharing a scar where that would have been. The idea that one is somehow an offshoot of the other. And also, significantly, even though she denies any knowledge of Anthony throughout the film, Adam's mother kind of confuses the two on a few occasions, which is interesting.
She does, yeah. Like she says, and I suppose it would work for both, whether it's like he has a secret doppelganger or whether it's the same person. She says, "I wish you would stop that silly dream of being an actor."
Yeah.
And but she also establishes this is Adam and it's her son, and she knows he's a history teacher.
Yeah.
But then she says, you have that great apartment.
And his apartment is hideous.
So at the very beginning of the film, there's actually a message from Adam's mom saying, "You live in this terrible apartment." So it could be that he's the same person. I've heard an interpretation that basically the beginning of the film is like taking place directly after the end of the film. So he's moved out from his nice apartment with his wife, and like he's left his pregnant wife to be with this woman he was cheating on his wife with.
Huh. Okay. That's a very interesting idea.
Because there's a very interesting, he has this picture of himself, and it's ripped. It's clearly ripped. And at the very end, he holds up the ripped picture to this, well, this is where it gets sort of confusing, but he holds up this ripped picture to this portrait there's this photograph of him and his wife. So you could see it as like at the end of the film, the reason he's got that photo ripped is because he split up with his wife. But then that doesn't really explain why there's 2 photos, unless I guess he had a copy.
It's it's a lot to deal with thematically. The idea of this being like a kind of elliptical structure, though, that Paul Schrader said it of Taxi Driver, that you could splice the beginning of the film and play it immediately after the end and just have it on loop. This film definitely feels it could be cyclical in some ways.
It is. It's interesting too, because in his history class, one of the main thing Adam is talking about is dictatorships. And he has this line about how history repeats itself. How there's this pattern that goes over and over.
Yep.
So you could interpret it as like he's stuck in this weird
limbo.
I mean, yeah, I guess technically you could be stuck in a weird time loop.
Yeah.
Where it's like he's reliving the same events over and over. I mean, very literally, that might not be true.
Allegorically.
Like metaphorically, it is. Like, he's clearly cheating on his wife, then he stops cheating on his wife and he tries to be a better husband and like more committed, but he clearly has this fear of commitment. And the very end of the film is him planning to go right back out to the sex club and abandon his wife.
Yeah. There's a lot of layers to it. I'm kind of starting to appreciate it a bit more, because I'll admit that at several points while watching the movie, I was more frustrated than anything else.
There are moments where you do get, because it's not like a Fight Club where it will overtly at the end say, like,
Yeah.
you're the same person. Or like a, Primal Fear or any of those kind of like split personality films where they usually try to tie it up in a neat little ribbon.
Yeah.
Like this one there's some debate whether it's two people or one person. So,
Yeah.
or whether Anthony lives inside Adam's head or whether Anthony lives like in the world.
Yeah, it's, a lot of the time you don't even know if it's an objective perspective you're seeing. It could be total fantasy. And I think...
Yeah, because some of the shots of Anthony, you see, it'll be like Adam, like even the way he realizes he's seen the extra is he's asleep and he's like kind of dreaming and he remembers the film and he just remembers the one moment where you see this bellhop character in the background and he realizes it's him.
Yeah.
And then he wakes up and goes back and plays the film.
Yeah.
And pauses it to like confirm like, oh my God, that is like a guy who looks exactly like me.
Yeah, it's... And also, as we mentioned earlier, how the surreal elements are so nonchalantly dropped in the film that it could make you question the realist elements as well.
Yeah, it does. I mean, this is the second episode I'm mentioning First Reformed, but it seems a lot like that in that there's multiple scenes in First Reformed where they are slightly frustrating too, because you're not sure whether they happen or not.
Yeah. Well, in that sense, it reminded, and this is kind of a lofty comparison to make, and I don't want to give Denis Villeneuve too much credit, as good as he is, but Bergman's Persona, which, have you seen it?
I haven't, no. I'm woefully behind on like many art films.
Well, it's about two women who go to a seaside cottage. One is a mute actress, and the other is a very talkative nurse who's taking care of her. And as time passes, it's often described as their personalities begin to merge, and they kind of blur the lines between themselves and other people. But it's also that the structure of the film, which is relatively straightforward up to that point, literally begins to break down, and there are like fourth wall breaks and weird cutting, and one of the most memorable sequences is they replay the same monologue from two angles, and it's this very just kind of disintegration of personality. And it reminded me a lot, I thought of that while watching anime, in that not only are these two characters kind of ambiguous with their relationship to one another, but also how the film itself is trying to befuddle you in your interpretation of the characters.
It's true. I don't want to have this episode be too long, but I guess in summation, I liked the film. Obviously, I recommended it. This is my second time watching it. Did you like it?
Did I? It's a film that gave me a lot to think about. And
it is, but sometimes with those types of films, you get like sometimes a film you have to think about you really like.
Yeah.
And then there's other times where you can appreciate what a film does when it makes you think, but it just doesn't work for you.
Yeah, I do think I need to rewatch it. Because there were times where I was really held wrapped by just the nature of the storytelling and the general mood that he'd managed to craft. And then there were other times where I was like, is this just like a barrage of meaningless symbols that, he's asking you to piece together? Because there is a difference between, a well-crafted piece of ambiguity and something that's just kind of totally abstract with no grounded quality. But I did, yeah, well, so the deliberateness of the choices,
I think most of the stuff he did was fairly intentional.
There's clearly a very, at least some sort of idea behind it, makes me want to revisit it and makes me appreciate it. But I'm still not totally certain about what the accumulated idea was.
I think it's basically supposed to be, no matter what interpretation, it's basically supposed to be a film about toxic masculinity and fear of commitment.
Yeah, it was definitely down that road. And I did enjoy watching it and found it very unsettling at points.
The cinematography is great. Yeah, it is. It does have horror movie or sci-fi movie qualities to it at times.
Yeah. The color palette I thought was really evocative, just keeping it to these either like kind of brown coffee tones or flat out like kind of unpleasant yellows. It created a very unique feeling while watching it.
Yeah, or just like dark.
Yeah.
Just like very, very dark.
Yeah. So I think I enjoyed it. And maybe enjoyed isn't the right word, but I think it engaged with me in a way that a lot of movies don't even try to engage with their viewers. And for that alone, I think it deserves a lot of credit.
It does. I mean, in this era where everyone tries to dumb down literally everything, it is nice to have a film that doesn't care if it pisses you off, like without explaining stuff.
Yeah.
You can, you don't have to like that, but you can definitely appreciate the sentiment.
It's giving the audience work to do. And that's, again, as you said, that's so lacking in a lot, especially mainstream, but also in a lot of other facets of cinema where, not everything needs to be a clear cut, this equals that, good versus evil, whatever you want to say, narrative. And this is definitely reaching for that space of ambiguity and unknowableness that is really commendable in a lot of ways.
Yeah, is it Villeneuve?
I think so.
Okay. He does, in his version of Blade Runner.
Mm-hmm. I haven't seen that.
It was similar where some of the film could be up to interpretation. And also, while it's not really up to interpretation, he did this film Sicario that I liked a lot, by the way. Much more actiony, but that also has kind of this ambiguous moral quality to it, because you basically discover that Benicio del Toro is working with the U.S. government to take down Mexican cartels, but that he's like an assassin for like the Colombian drug cartels. So like the reason he's doing it is to like get rid of the competition.
Oh.
Yeah, and so it's like you're like rooting for him, but then like he does this really clearly awful stuff, and it's like clearly not okay. So it makes you we can watch the film at some point and cover it, but there's this scene where he's like holding this cop who's been distributing drugs for the cartel. Like, he's got him at gunpoint. He's making him drive to meet with this cartel member, and he gets him to pull the guy over. And he's like, now say this through the megaphone and then I'll let you go or something. And he's like, okay. And he says, get out of your vehicle. And he gets him to get out of the vehicle, drop your gun. And then the cop goes out and steps like towards the guy. And Benicio's character just pops him in the head. And like he just kills the cop outright. And then he goes and like takes this drug cartel member hostage. But it's like very clearly he was in the wrong for distributing drugs, but like he didn't deserve to die. He wasn't like, this cop wasn't out like killing people like the cartel members. He was just like needed extra money, so he was like distributing it for them. So Villeneuve, he tends to have that ambiguous kind of like, should I be rooting for this character?
The only other film of his I think I've seen is Arrival, which I really liked.
Yeah, no, I liked Arrival a lot too, but I'll try to keep it spoiler. Well, I mean, we spoil everything, but
it's hard to talk about as well without spoiling. But it also let's just say that it has an element of narrative deception or kind of ambiguity about what's really happening and when it's happening that is very akin to Enemy, I feel, in the way that it's kind of obfuscating certain qualities of the narrative.
Yeah, that's something that he does.
Yeah, and he does it well.
He does. I'm excited he's actually doing a version of Dune.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm a pretty big fan of Dune. My girlfriend loves the Lynch version of Dune, which is like, she likes even the 3.5 hour cut, which is just so ridiculous.
I haven't read or seen anything related to Dune, but I know the cast looks amazing for that movie.
I'm excited to see it because like there's been a couple adaptations now, but like personally I just feel like they've never really done the book justice. Like they've hit the beats, or well, in David Lynch's case, he just did whatever the hell that was. But
well, David Lynch is gonna David Lynch,
basically. But But I'm excited to see this guy doing a version of Dune just to see what he does.
I'll keep an eye out for it. It was supposed to come out this year, but I don't know.
They're probably going to push it back. Yeah, they're pushing back all sorts of stuff because of coronavirus.
Yikes.
Yeah, the world is screwed when these billion-dollar production companies are literally pushing back their million-dollar films.
Yeah, oh god. I don't even want to think about it right now.
Sorry, I don't want to make anybody nervous. Everything's fine.
We all know what's going on. It's a situation, but that's a situation to discuss on another episode.
Exactly. So I think we should wrap this up.
Yep. It's been a pleasure talking about this very weird movie with you, Sean.
Yeah, and I look forward to doing many more episodes about ambiguous, weird films.
As do I.
So anyway, for Celluloid Citizens, I'm Sean M. Thompson.
I'm Brian O'Connell.
And stay safe, everybody. Well, that wasn't threatening at all.